I'm doing everything from waste management, it's just endless because right now the world is changing. So I studied architecture in Madrid. And then with this, I love, one of the things I did tell you, my hobbies is traveling. Since I was a kid, my dad was a pilot, so we had the opportunity to travel a lot with him, and seeing the world open my brain, like my head. Before we didn't have internet and we couldn't really see elsewhere. It was so limited, right? Your TV channel was just the Spanish TV channel. And so I took a sabbatical after architecture school, and I went to travel to Asia, and I did India, and then I ended up in Singapore for, they needed architects in 2007. So I started working there. And that's where I met my boss, who was so much into sustainability. He was an Irish guy. And then I did the green mark and I did the lead. And then I went to the UK and I did a master's degree on building performance and advanced energy studies for architecture. And that was 2010. And then I came back to Singapore because the recession was going on in Europe. So it was better opportunity of work in Asia. And I worked there for 7 years as a sustainability consultant for, it's called advanced technology buildings, like hospital, airports, data centers, like factory kind of building, no? And I was doing green mark and I was doing lead. And then I felt that it was a bit like, not super rewarding. And then we, my husband and I bought land here in Lombok, and in Indonesia, and we made our home, which is done out of bamboo, and it's really sustainable, like a super low impact house. And then I moved here because I had another house design opportunity, and then I got pregnant, and then we've been here for the past 8 years. And I have been doing mostly, I went back to another course on circular economy. And right now I study on my own, like I got into circular economy and waste management, and then circular economy business models and regenerative business models that help the community. And, in general, I just been learning a lot by participating actively in projects and being very curious. Yeah.
That is really awesome.
Fascinating. And Ophelia, I think I'm going to just interject and mention, Paula, you said green mark and lead, and we all also noticed BREEAM. The BREEAM.
BREEAM, yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And
so
just wanted to mention that we saw that, and I'm curious about it.
Yes, so they're they're the same thing. It's a green building certification, but normally they refer to a building code. So the LEED is the American one, and it refers to the American building code. It's normally used, for example, in Asia. In the US, I'm sure it's used everywhere, but in Asia, it's used mostly for corporate buildings because they're American corporates, so they need to have that green certification. Then Singapore has their own green certification, which is called Green Mark. So normally every project needed to have both. One was the American company requirement, and the other one was the Singapore requirement. So they can overlap. LEED was more restringent, so we could do LEED, and with that we could get Green Mark, right? And then BREEAM, I was working in corporate, and to do this, to get this accreditation, you need to study. I mean, it's not like studying architecture, which is 7 years school, right? It's like studying maybe 3 months. So, and they cost you, like BREEAM costs £5,000 to do the exam, and LEED in US dollar. But these companies, they have policies because they want their employees to get accredited. So I found out that if you do it with them. If you pass, they will pay you they will refund you the cost. So then, because I'm like that, I was like, what? Okay, so then I'm gonna do all. So then I also did the British one, which is BREEAM, which is the most hard to get of all, because it has a lot more thought to it. And also the way of verifying a building changes. So the procedures are different, but the essence at the end is the same. But it's like a checklist. Oh, you do this, you do that. But for example, I'm here in Indonesia and I don't have this certification available. I don't have the same building code. And many times I couldn't even do it. So for example, my house is in the middle of nowhere. It's the most low impact project you've ever seen. I count for everything. And yet I couldn't comply with many of their requirements, because, they would need a contractor that has this stamp, whatever, it's a lot more for like the mainstream, let's call it. But that doesn't mean that you could not have a very green project elsewhere. It's just that you don't fit within the code and those categories, right? So I did this first and then I did my master's because I thought this checklist, to be fair, it was my boss, the Irish, who told me you should do the LEED. They pay you for it, and you're smart, you can pass it. So, okay, they gave me the book and then I started reading. And then when I started reading, I was like, what? Oh, so it happens that architecture is like the #1 CO2 emitter sector in the world, mostly because we do everything in buildings, inside buildings. So our activities, our productions, our manufacturing plants, our factories, they are buildings. So they account as building consumption. And I wasn't aware that building had any environmental impact as such. I studied architecture, I finished in 2005. So it's quite sad to know that I'm 42 now, that all of the architects older than me that are still practicing, and there's many of them, they really are not aware of it. It's such a new thing, right? So, and in the new context of decarbonization, being the biggest sector is one of the biggest things, right? So going back to what you were saying before, or what Ophelia was saying for your students, when I did my master's at 30, then I went back to corporate and I suddenly became a director right away at 30. Because there was no sustainability department. No one was doing what I was doing. No one knew anything of what I became an expert, because the older generations had never been trained for it. So anything that has to do with regenerative, with circular economy, with carbon, with the new challenges that the world is facing, whether it's oceans or architecture or agriculture or food production, everything is so new that the younger generations have a great opportunity to succeed in their jobs, because they will be able to become experts much faster. They don't need to sit on the ladder and wait for all those steps, to people to retire and climb. The old school system is broken because what the world needs right now has never been done before. So I reckon it's like an industrial revolution, and the opportunity for the younger generations is enormous. My experience here is that the younger people, and okay, I'm 42, maybe you don't consider me young, but I'm young in the architecture world, right? The famous architects are 70, and in the professional world, I'm on 40s, also a woman after maternity and all of that. It's still a quite junior position. There is so much to do that I feel that the only thing is that you just need, like me, I did BREEAM, I did Green Mark, I did LEED. No one forced me to do it, but I did it because I thought that was interesting. And then I did my master's because I thought, oh, this is not enough about the topic. And it's just like, if you have your own drive, like the grit, that's how You know, if you want to change things, I keep meeting people here that they complain, oh, look at this, look at that. But, you know, I'm a doer, and I think you achieve a lot being a doer.
What specific occupation or job titles and industries are best served by this green mark accreditation?
Yeah, so it would have to do everything related to buildings. So it would be the architects, the designers, interior designers, also the MEP engineers, so mechanical, electrical, and plumbing engineers. Those have the biggest role. So when you are like a green mark accredited professional or a lead or even a sustainable consultant, you know, I do this for a lot of projects here. I always explain to my clients that I'm not the one making the sustainability because I'm not the designer, I'm not the architect, I'm not the builder, right? I am like the orchestra director. I don't play the instruments, but I direct the orchestra. So I know the goals, I know how to get there, and you just need to combine all of the stakeholders. In buildings, it's a lot. Building is not a one-person job, right? So there is the landscape designers, there is the contractors, there is the client, there is all of the different consultants. No, it depends on the type of building, but imagine I was doing this in hospitals or in airports. It's like 100 teams. And I know the targets, I know what we want to achieve, I know how we want to achieve it. But for example, I would go to the electrical engineer and I would say, okay, I need to calculate how much are the electrical loads of this building. And I need to estimate that by thinking what are going to be the users. Like, you know, if it's an office building, I know they'll come from 8 till 5 and they'll have their laptops on and blah, blah. If it's an airport, I have completely different timetables. And I need to do these huge Excel sheets where I estimate, it's an estimation. When are the lights going to be on? How much the air cons are going to be on these machines, blah, blah, blah. So you need to work with all of them. And then I put all together and I said, no, I cannot consume this amount of power. I need to consume less. And then I need to have them brainstorming. So, you know, in Singapore, it would be low. Okay, so we could actually collect all of the water from the condensation of the aircon machines and use that for irrigation, and we will save this amount of water. Okay, and other person, and then everybody throws ideas to achieve the targets, no, which could be 100% recycle and treat all your water, or reduce 50% the water consumption, or you know, try to reduce the energy consumption, and then the rest of the energy I could put solars on the roof. And all of that is a process that the engineers need to calculate for you. And then you do what is called the feasibility study, which means, okay, so this machine could save us all this energy, and then, but this machine costs 3 times the cost of this other machine. So, but it saves me this energy. So how many years would I take to recover the investment? And then I am the one that goes to the client and have all of the sustainable strategy list with all of the plus, cost, minus, the life cycle cost analysis. And I explain to them, look, if you invest this machine, the client would be, I want to be a green mark platinum. And to do that, I am the one that knows how to get there. I need to achieve these targets. And then I need to explain to him what are the options we have to achieve each target. Sometimes some things don't get done. Sometimes, you know, I don't have the equipment in the country, or the servicing, or it's going to be really difficult to import it, or I don't have the engineers or the space, or in the current regulation, I couldn't use it. So all of that is a process throughout the building design that you need to work together with all of the different instrument players. And then you present it to the client, who is ultimately the one that needs to pay for all of that. And then during construction, you need to make sure, of course, that your construction is the less pollutant as possible, which is another new world. You know, you need to work with the contractor and do reports and have them, you know, recycling all the materials and making sure that the water runoffs from the store, if I'm not gonna dirt the road to the next door, you know, there's a lot of different policies for that, erosion control, things like that. And then you need to report this and document it. And normally after 1 year, you must come again and check how the building is doing, because one of the biggest problems of these certifications is that once you finish the building, you leave and you are not using it. And the building users are the one that manage and operate the building. So if they want to, like, you know, use it differently of how you planned it, then you will not be achieving the target. So you come a year after, it's kind of like you get the certification and after construction, but then you come a year after to ratify it. No, and make sure that it's done, you know, make sure that, oh, they're going to recycle all these ways they did it throughout the year, that, you know, all of those things have been implemented. Yeah. But it's a lot of different occupations, you know, it's a lot.
Really painting a vivid picture of the different roles throughout the whole building life cycle.
Yeah, which is, I mean, people think it's like, I always tell my team here, like, it's not a one person's job. So it's not about egos, because you need each other, you know. I can't build it, I will design it, but you need each other. So there has, you know, the relationships need to be there. No one is more important than the other. Because, you know, here in Indonesia is so pyramidal. And I'm a woman also, which is really a challenge because here is a very Muslim country, and trying to explain that, you know, there is not the hierarchy. It's not like I'm the big boss and, you know, you need to give and take as well. It's all about relations, no? Because you cannot do it by myself. I'm not alone. My business is not me alone, you know. You know, these certifications, they never, and even the net zero, you know, net zero concept is all about lowering the emissions to net zero, but they don't count the construction process. And, you know, for example, cement, which is one of the greatest building materials that human created, no, because it's been used so much. Cement is 8% of the global emissions. It's such a huge pollutant. You know, 1 kilo of cement is 1 kilo of CO2 to the atmosphere. So, you know, like, for example, China, Shenzhen, this city, used more cement in 10 years than the whole of the United States in its whole building history. So, you know, like, suddenly it's like the proportions of, you know, so, and if you think that the whole of the United States cement consumption, it's the same as one only city in China in 10 years, you know, it puts you in perspective how much we are polluting, you know, with just the one material. So there's a huge industry on materials now, on sustainable materials, because you want to use recycled materials, you want to use materials that don't need that much energy to be manufactured. So right now, for example, we launch like these things, like small, like tiny homes. It's like a wood cabin. It almost feels like a northern, but it's from a planted forest, and it's all made for disassembly. So you could put it together and then take it down. And, you know, like, no one thought of what's going to happen to a building after it's built. So one of the principles of circular economy is design for disassembly. You know, I have a phone, and when it breaks, I should be able to take all of its components and rare metals, which are rare, to use them again. The human has never thought of, you know, reusing everything. Like, nature is so, you know, it's so, you know, it's been designing for millennia and millions of years. So when I learned about circular economy, I understand that nature, everything in nature is circular. Nature reuses everything, whether it decomposes it or whatever, but everything's in cycles, right? And we humans ignore that fact forever. And right now we have the problems of waste and garbage, which is a huge global problem. And we are the only species that produces garbage, you know, like, it's really a human-made problem. So for a lot of the people that don't believe in climate change, you can always challenge them and say, well, what about garbage? Because that, obviously, we did it, you know, because there's no one else that could do it, you know. So architecture is the same. You make a building and you need to think what's going to happen after. Demolition is a huge environmental impact. Building is like, I think 40% of the waste, because you count waste by weighting it, by weight. So buildings are heavy. So, you know, so in terms of impactful, 50% of materials come of natural, like resource materials. It's for building industry. So imagine if we could reuse those materials, you know, we would be extracting 50% less to the world. And one of the things we need to do now, while we need to keep providing for homes and shelter, because this is essential for us, we also need to be providing nature with time to preserve and recover itself. If I keep cutting and if I keep extracting, then I'm not going to give nature time to restore itself. And the good news is that nature is so good at doing that, but if we keep pressuring it, it's not going to be able to do it. So you know, if you think of architecture and buildings, the architect is one out of 1,000 different jobs.
It makes me think, Ophelia, I'm going to interject one more time. You just painted the whole life cycle of a building, because you added the construction, the materials, and the demolition, as well as the design. And I wonder,
The use.
yes, and use. And I wonder, you know, because Ophelia and I are thinking about these sort of post-secondary professional certifications, accreditations that teachers can introduce their students to. And we're looking at dozens and dozens of them. And for some of the things that you mentioned, like the concrete and the materials and the circular economy, do most of the schemes that you mentioned, like Green Mark, like BREEAM, like LEED, do they encompass the concrete, etc.?
No.
Okay.
No.
Okay.
So
that
they are
becomes-
more to like, it's a lot more basic, I would say. It's just they will tell you use less concrete or use concrete with ash, but they don't go deep into that. You know, there's some, it's related, because shelter is something that we will always need. For me, for example, like when there's time for crisis and things like that, anything that has to do with electricity, electrical, and you don't need to be an engineer, you could be an electrician, which is a 2-year job, you know, it's not even a career, a university degree. Electricity and plumbing, water, which is gravity, water recycling. I do water recycling here with plants in planter boxes. That I feel is the future. Like I was saying, my husband, I think I'm gonna stop and go and do these courses, you know? And he was like, what do you mean? Like, you're the architect? Yeah, but I need to be able to put a toilet together. You know, like those things are key. Do you know how to clean the water? Like when we came here, it's like, where am I gonna get the water from? There's no water provision. What am I gonna do with my poop and my toilet and my wastewater? And all of that stuff that has to do also with permaculture. So it's also about growing food. It's so interlinked. Shelter, architecture, passive design, which is how materials perform, what's cooler and what's, you know, without the need of, you know, putting a cable together, putting a solar panel together. All those things are, these people will never lack jobs, because everybody's gonna need to fix a faucet, whether it's COVID or whether it's not a COVID. You know what I mean? So, for example, here I lack good electric, like there's not a school for that. It's more or less like, oh, my dad was an electrician, so I learned with him. But there's a lack for that. There should be a school of landscaping and growing and how to do it properly without, because we unlearned so many things, right? With the fertilizers and the industrial agriculture. And there's a huge movement of people that now are relearning what our ancestors knew once. And those are gonna be the jobs of the future, you know, and jobs that make you resilient, because you will be able to say, hey, I can help you with your water systems at home, and you help me with your electricity, and you can, you know, so it's very community-based jobs, you know. And I feel that they don't need to be highly educated. We don't need to handle rocket science. We need a lot more people that can do the jobs. Like in my profession, I am probably the only one that has, and the engineer, the two that have the higher degree education. The rest, they have lower degree, and they still are as important as, you know. So sanitation, anything that has to do with our impact, because a building is everything, right? And if you can incorporate landscape and you know, the general of it, I think all of those things are gonna be always needed everywhere. You know, to have clean water, to have a safe shelter where you can be comfortable and you have a good thermal comfort, and you're not really hot in the summer, and you're not really cold in the winter, and you have a little electricity, and you know how to, all of those things are super important.
Just painted quite a picture, Paula, of the post-secondary accreditations that are maybe a 2-year program after high school that can be
Exactly.
as valuable as a 4-year degree or a graduate degree.
And you start with that, no, let's say you start with plumbing and you learn the essentials, but then this person can say, oh, look, I'm gonna start now learning about how to collect rainwater and treat it, and how to do drip irrigation. I mean, at the end, the ramifications of those little, you know, electricity, solar, renewables, that, you know, it's just endless, batteries. The ramifications of all of that are so enormous. And starting with that, I think it's a great, like, again, like I said, I really want to learn that for myself. Like, I can't change a plug in my house. Like, it's just like, I feel a bit sometimes like, I mean, this must be so easy. It must be connecting a cable, you know, like, how come I don't know how to do it, you know? And it's resilience, you know? It's like, I mean, the moment of COVID, it was like, oh my God, if this breaks, what am I gonna do, you know?
Can you pinpoint like the demand that you see, the industry demand you see? Can you give us like a number or something of the industry demand that you see for sustainability competencies?
Okay. Yeah, so look, and this is a very good question, because there's been a change. I did my master's in 2010, and I could only work in corporates because they had their CSR budgets, and, you know, but the common folk, no one was doing it. No one cared. It was like, oh, that's really cool, but, you know, no one paid attention. And since the COVID and then the war, because, you know, suddenly Europe is, you know, oh, we don't have fossil fuels, it's so expensive, we can't heat ourselves. In Indonesia also, like, the whole world is feeling the pressure. In less than a year, I moved from doing designs and architecture to be sustainability consultant. If it was before 80-20, now it's the same, but the opposite. I'm now sustainable consultancy, 80% and 20% architecture. I'm doing everything from waste management, it's just endless, because right now the world is changing. So it's so, I think now is the moment. So in fact, I was talking about, you know, I need to rebrand my company, because I've been showing as an architect, but I've been doing all these other things, and they were kind of like really far away in my website. And now I want them to be in the forefront of my website, you know? I did a project here, and I just want to mention it really quickly because it's interesting, that has to do with, it's an organic waste conversion center. So you bring food waste from kitchens and, you know, restaurants, and you feed it to these flies. They're called black soldier flies, and the maggots of these flies eat the food, and then they make compost right away, and then the maggots can be used for feeding chickens and feeding fish. And, you know, I did that in my house first at a little scale just to learn about it. The flies only live 6 weeks. My son is 7 and he learned about it. So even outside of university, there's so many things you can do, you know, that it would be like a student. We brought it to the school. We did the student. I will send you because I designed like small wood, little black soldier flies places. And I have the instructions of how to build it and how to use it. And it's really interesting because you learn about that and, you know, how the decomposers work and all of that. And we built a facility here that now it's operating, and then, you know, organic farm came in and they're growing with that compost there, food, and all the farmers here go there. And, you know, actually Kenya, you guys are where exactly?
I'm in Nigeria.
Yeah,
No. So I was,
and I'm
you
in
know,
Washington, DC.
okay. So Kenya has the biggest black solid fly facility from a Washington, DC company,
Oh, funny.
which is called Synergy. And they collect 200 ton a day of actually also human compost. I mean, human poop from toilets, from the organic toilets together. So sewage, you know, kind of the, how do you call that? The manure, human manure, and organic waste from farms, like fruit farms and kitchen and restaurants. And they convert that into compost. And then they sell this compost to the Kenya farmers. And, you know, it's like a huge, it was funded by the Bill Gates. We made here 1 ton, not 200 ton. But those are little things that I've been working on here that actually get a lot of people to learn new things and give jobs, you know, and you don't need to be highly educated. So there's a lot of these little initiatives. And now we're doing, you know, in this place, we're gonna do, how do you call it? Aquaponics, you know, when you have the fish and the pipes, and we need plumbers to do that. You produce compost and you grow veggies with the fish, and it's just all of these little experiments that people can learn, and those can lead to industries that at big scale can be actually really profitable and could work on a city scale. So the example of Synergy is an American company, went to Kenya, went to Kenya, did this, you know, they got funded by the Bill Gates, you know, Foundation. They were able to make it at a big scale, and now it's one of the, you know, it employs like I don't know how many people, and it was profitable within a year, you know, of being there. So and they sell the larvae back to the US to feed poultry, and so, you know, there's a lot of new things that don't exist in the world that you could do at a small scale, learn. And if you're lucky and get the right funding, make it into big scale. And there's no one else that did it before. And it's just using nature to do it for you. It's like learning, no? I think all of these little things that I've done pro bono just for the sake of it are actually also things that for a school, it's important to look around to learn, because you could do site visits and go to places that could inspire the students, you know. And there's nothing better than networking in this world, you know, you network. Another thing that I organized was a Lombok Eco Flea Market. I made a logo and I made rules, and only vendors that have these businesses, you know, it works really well because this is a developing country. So a lot of people have very little business. They made their baskets out of, you know, straw, or they have their coconut bowls. So I wanted to create a market that only sells earth-friendly products, and that are, you know, associations that are empowering women and all of that. I could also send you that, because we made it into a booklet, and we made one, and it worked so well, because, you know, this is a tourist place, so the tourism loves the flea markets, you know, they go there, they were buying, it's a lot of beauty and cosmetics that are all natural, and the coconut oil, and I have here, it's like these women, they do with like the fabrics that people throw, they make bags, so you don't need to use your plastic bag. And two of the women of the group continued, and now it's a super established company, that does one market every month, and now big hotels call and say, could you do it here? They give you the space because it's kind of like a tourist attraction, and it's like all of the little companies, and they have great products, and those things are so easy to do, just with, you just push a little bit, and sometimes they take on their own, right? But they have been done elsewhere. It's just to have an eye and look at it, and I have the idea, and let's do it. It could be done by the school, as let's do the Eco Fest, and you invite people and you organize it, and you promote it, and then the vendors sold so much, so they realized together, under those values, they were selling more. Some people were like, oh, I'm selling bikinis, and I was like, no, you don't comply with the criteria. And she said, oh, but I also make soaps at home with my mom's oil. I recycled it, and I said, you can sell the soaps. And now her whole company is based on soap making, like at the end, when you promote these things and you make it into a better business for them, a lot of people get the courage, and now they're learning, and now she has 3 women working for her, and they're doing also natural mosquito repellent, and they supply to hotels, like in bulk. She learned how to make soaps, and now hotels buy in bulk, and they have, this branding when they say we only buy from naturally made, Lombok based companies, and, like, it's just, you kind of create movements that promote local, conscious, earth-friendly businesses. That has nothing to do with architecture, but it's, another thing that even an architect can do, if you're passionate enough.
It's making me think, as we're looking at different industry schemes, that we've noticed, and Ophelia is managing this project, we have over 100 different accreditations across various industries that include certifications of places, goods, services, systems, and then accreditations of people. And so many of them seem to be coming from sort of post-industrial or industrialized countries, in very resource intensive situations. And I'm going to cut this out of the recording, I think, but we've not noticed very many coming from other kinds of countries. There's one in India called Griha. It's a kind of, they call it an indigenous green building scheme. And listening to you speak, it seems like there's an opportunity there for a new scheme or two, and that could be introduced into the school systems, or other sectors. And, sort of coming more from a place like Indonesia, a place like Southeast Asia, maybe collaborating with Sub-Saharan Africa or something like that, that reflects more of this local ecology, circular economy. So I'm just putting it out there because I feel like a scheme is needed that comes from a different place, that isn't a traditional kind of industrialized context.
Yeah, because not everything is like that. And if the developing countries move towards the industrialization like we did, that's not the goal, The goal is to build it differently, make it better,
Right. And so we're not really seeing that. So I think if we could clone you somehow, you would create that new scheme, with the certifications and accreditations. Oh, and the other thing about these certifications and accreditations is they're so expensive, as you mentioned.
So expensive.
5,000. And so,
that's for getting the exam. to do your building, it would be like $20,000.
Yeah.
It's very
Yeah.
corporate, you know, it's
Right.
very corporate. It's like business for corporates to clean their image a little bit.
So anyway, point taken and point made that if there were an alternative where the teachers could introduce their students and the students could still get a really good job, but it just gives them another more holistic skill set
Yeah.
to think about circular economy from more of a local, small and micro business angle. Anyway,
Mhm.
I'm just seeing this need that seems to be unmet. And I mean, Ophelia and I and a team, we have just been pouring through these schemes, and there are so many of them. There is a
many.
permaculture one out of Thailand. So there are some exceptions, but you know, it's not necessarily geared towards
And at the end, a lot of these projects, instead of having the stamp, you know, what we need is funding and money. So there is a lot of projects that are really good, and it's still the green credits, you know, blue credits, green credits, anything that gives you funding for doing something good for the planet, you know, it's still not out there so available. So imagine, okay, I make this project lead. What do I get? It's just a plaque on the wall and I am part of a list. But there is no other incentive, you know? And in the other hand, we're working here on doing reforestation and it's so difficult to get the green carbon credits, you know? So all of these certifications should be focusing on, you know, facilitating achieving international funding, because so many companies now need to have that, you know, they need to buy from this small, and it looks like if you're small, because you don't have the admin capacity to go through a whole carbon credit verification scheme. I mean, those things take years, you know, and you will need to hire a company to do it. You don't have the funds to do it. And at the end, all you want is to have enough little cash so that you can continue with your good work, which not always is so profitable, you know, because saving the environment is not always so profitable. You know, it's good, but you know, it doesn't. So I think that's the scheme that we're missing.
Yes.
The certifications that allow you to get access to funding from like business to business almost, you know. There's so many companies out there. I've been able to get from donors whose companies have CSR, and they don't need to go through the whole Vera carbon credit verification, you know, but it's kind of like having some more holistic that allows for this kind of initiatives to have an easier path to succeed, you know. Make sure that you are providing the right message, you know. I don't have that much contact with high school students and stuff, but I do know that there is this thing now where a lot of them, they're quite depressed because they see that, you know, the world is not looking really great ahead and their future is compromised. So, you know, and I went through that when I did my master's, and then, you know, I was writing my thesis and I'm reading all of this bad news, and oh my God, I mean, I was like, you know, in this mindset of I might as well just die, you know, because this is horrible, what's going to happen. And I think it's quite important to the message, while always trying to explain to them what it means. The message needs to be really much on the hope that they need to be the ones changing, you know. And again, that not many old people know about this, so they will resist. It's like the conservative will resist to the change, but that in 20 years, the students now will be working, they will be there, you know. So the mindset is that they need to come to change the panorama. because the human being, I mean, I'm not an anthropologist, but we only react when the problem is in our doorstep, right? But they are going to be the ones that are going to have to. So the old school things, even in, old school economy or, everything, all those paradigms are changing now. Capitalism is dying, like right now it cannot be that much capitalism. You need to also give, you need to also protect nature, the natural capitalist. So you need to try to learn a lot about it, what it means, show examples, and almost like tell them that they are the ones. They are not going to be the ones following the steps of the older generation, which is almost how we were taught. For us, it was like, follow those steps. No, they are going to be the ones that will create the change. Yeah. And one of the biggest things that are very important is that consumism, buy more, doesn't make you happier. Like our societies in the big countries, in the developed countries, are very stressed societies, very anxious societies. We have so much, and yet we are not. So the balance, no? Look at Bhutan or Costa Rica, the balance of well-being and work and economy and nature. That balance is the aim, for a happy life. And I think that's really important to share the people, because if not, with the Instagram, it's almost like everybody wanna be Kylie Jenner and have the big car. And I think those need to not be the main goals of our kids. The main goals must be on, achieving, but not destroying, and changing what is built already. I would always try to guide them from there, from the hope, from the hope that they have power and that it's going to be, that they are here to change things because the old school system is failing, I think that's the message, because that will give a lot of them hope that, they will be able to. So in my master's, the first module, it was a week of the world's environment, where are we now? And it was the most depressing thing. And I remember one of the lecturers says, we are here so that you can change the world. And that, I felt like, okay, this is the first time that I've ever heard anyone saying that to me. It's almost like, like empowering me. Before, it's like, look at this architect, how he did it, look at that. It was always like referring to already pre-established methods, So I think that's the lesson. But learn about it, read about it, have the message, discuss about it, discuss about COP27, what happened, be on top of all the environmental news. And go to class and, for 10 minutes, hey, did you read the news? Did you see what happened? Did you see that France is going to make now, is going to ban all of the flights that are more than that you could do by train? Why is that? Go into all the topics. Sustainability is enormous. It covers the whole world, all the activities we do. And I think it would be great to always have a reference to the news, to what's happening, not always need to be bad news, So be very informed and very, just keep informing, because then when they go out, they look at that stuff, It's so important, knowledge, here they're cutting all of the forests to plant corn, and, the villages are getting flooded and they don't know why. And it's like, well, bare mountains without vegetation brings floods to the villages down underneath, in the valleys. And that really simple thing that I take for granted, even a lot of the foreigners don't know it. There is so much disconnection between us and the natural world and how nature works. And I think that's something that even if you're a math teacher, you could spend 10 minutes and discussing the COP27, what happened, or, this news. Just always bring something to the table, because you want them to raise that mindset, to be always looking at it, Yeah. I talked about this with a lot of friends, and they send me news. Hey, look, you will like this. you know, like I see that they are aware now, you know? So that's what you want to do. And it is true. If they go into these fields of doing things different and being more sustainable, regenerative, and all of that, they will have a job 100% tomorrow. Always, you know, because it's all the world needs now. That's exactly what the world needs. The world keeps needing doctors. We need still plumbers and stuff, but the new industry that is coming, there isn't barely any people.